All right, let's talk startup pitching. Now, I'm going to argue the only thing that's more difficult than pitching your startup pre-launch, pre-revenue is pitching your startup post-launch. And I'm going to suggest that you want to wait and hold off on launching your startup until the last possible minute, until you absolutely have to, which is going to sound a little counterintuitive. I think we're all trained to want to get that MVP out, to get that validation, to get that testing. Do all of that. Just do it in private beta. Don't launch. Because here's what happens when you launch while you're in the middle of the pitch. You lose control and you lose an ability to focus the conversation. Because once you've launched, the narrative about what you're building, why you're building it, the future that you're building for, the TAM that you've built around all goes out the window. Because at launch, all we want to know is how is it performing? How many users do you have? What's the revenue? What's the revenue growth month over month, year over year? What have you done in the last week? What have you done today? What have you done in the last hour? How many users have you gotten since this video started? And so now everything that you've built, everything that you're building towards, like you might have just started creating this thing 3 months ago, right? In the last 90 days, you've built an entire SaaS enterprise operation that has paying customers, and none of that will matter. All of the great, ambitious things that you created, the hardships that you went to, the late nights, all of the toilet, because all we're going to want to know is what happened, who's using it, how often are they using it. And so that's what happens post-launch. And that's why I would advocate that the pre-launch, pre-revenue, while difficult, while a lot of barriers, while a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of risk associated with that, is a little bit easier of a narrative for a startup founder to pitch, because now you're really pitching a vision, you're pitching a possibility, you're pitching a world that could exist, that might exist. And when you pitch launch, post-launch, what we're talking about is what's currently happening. How many current users do you have? What has happened currently? How much activity is there? How much growth is there? And it's less about how people might use the product, especially if you're building a new product. It's a new entry into the system where nobody's had exposure to it before. You're going to disrupt something. You're going to do something that's never occurred, like an Uber or an Airbnb of X, Y, and Z. Nobody was hailing cabs on their cell phone. Nobody was renting rooms or couches from strangers. But like these things revolutionized industries, and it takes time to show that. And so when you have a pre-launch, pre-revenue startup that you're pitching, you can control the narrative because you can talk about that vision. You can talk about that new future that's unveiling. And my only advice is just caution yourself about when you want to go public launch. We're all eager to do it. We're all excited to do it. But consider holding back for a moment and consider that the second that you do it, that you can't undo it, you can't take it back. And the entire conversation, the entire narrative becomes about those numbers and they become about those metrics, and you lose control over the excitement and the fundamentals and the basis for what you're building and how it's going to revolutionize, change, disrupt, and in any way modify the ecosystem for the better. So pre-revenue, pre-launch, not a bad place to be. Sounds terrifying, sounds scary, but post-launch, that's a hard game.